After all, although the Messer family had tremendous power and influence, they weren't purely a business family. Thus, their wealth was still a little lacking. After Harry made his bid, he made a bid of $5.5 million as he wanted to tell Harry. He was sure that he would win the auction of the Moon Island this time. If Harry was smart, it would be best for him to give up. Unfortunately, Walter Messer was disappointed. How could Harry let him do what he wanted? He immediately followed up with the bid, $56 million. Walter Messer stood up with a gloomy face and signaled the auctioneer to stop the auction. If he wanted the auction to stop, who would dare to disagree? The auctioneer did not even dare to breathe. Now he was so scared that his legs turned soft and he could not stand anymore. Walter Messer asking him to stop the auction was just enough to let him breathe a sigh of relief. Slowly, he exerted his strength. Otherwise, he would really be lying on the ground. The auction had been interrupted by Walter Messer. No one dared to say anything, but Harry frowned and felt very unhappy in his heart. With so many people here, it was a little too overbearing to stop just like that. Walter Messer turned around and walked towards Harry, causing the others to feel uneasy. It's coming. Sir Messer was going to turn hostile. This person is too blind. He dares to snatch what Sir Messer wants. I don't think he will live until tomorrow. Everyone was not optimistic about Harry. They felt that it was not reasonable for him to offend Walter Messer. No matter how good Moon Island was, it would still be a dead end. Only people were alive. How could you still be alive after offending Sir Messer? Regarding Harry's suicidal behavior, everyone felt that this man must have gone crazy over gains and losses. Mr. Parker, right? My name is Walter Messer. Let's get to know each other. Walter Messer walked up to Harry and said. He didn't even look at Randy and the others who were standing next to him. His expression showed that he was incomparably arrogant. Nice to meet you, Harry said casually. Anyone could see the expression on his face. I didn't expect Mr. Parker to also like Moon Island. I have a request. I want Moon Island. Mr. Parker, can you give me some face and withdraw from this auction? Walter Messer was very surprised. He didn't do anything to Harry. Instead, he lowered his body slightly and spoke to Harry in a negotiating tone. Harry smiled and said, I'm sorry. I have my eyes on this island. I can't quit. Walter Messer shook his head. Don't say it too early. I think Mr. Parker still doesn't know who I am. In his opinion, the reason why Harry competed with him was that he didn't know how powerful the Messer family was. Otherwise, why would a normal person go against him? However, Harry's answer was very surprising. I know. You're the heir of the Messer family in the capital. I heard that your Messer family is also known as one of the 4 big families. Walter Messer sneered. Since you know about it, why are you still going against me? Is there something wrong with your brain? Do you know the consequences of offending the Messer family? Harry also sneered. You didn't let anyone bid on me the moment you came here. You are treating me like heir. This was the auction, not some random small shop. You want to obtain the Moon Island? All right, let's talk about money. The highest bidder gets it. Let's see who will pay more. Seeing Harry's attitude not caring about Walter Messer, the surrounding people all shook their heads and shouted. Crazy! This man is really crazy. This time, this guy's really offended him to death. Lester was extremely excited in his heart. He thought to himself, come on, let's continue. If we continue to offend Walter Messer, I won't be able to take care of you, and Sir Messer won't be able to kill you. Killing intent suddenly appeared on Walter Messer's face. He nodded and said, All right, what a nice way to talk about money. Since you don't want to give me face, let's continue bidding. After saying that, he turned around and walked back to his seat. Continue the auction. I bid $60 million. Walter Messer was very angry in his heart. However, it was not good to flare up now. After all, this was the scene of the auction. With so many people guarding him, it wasn't good for him to go too far. He had to pay attention to the word reason in everything. If Harry could give up the auction, Walter Messer would buy the Moon Island at a low price of more than $50 million. No one would say anything. Although he still used some tricks, it was still within the rules. If he didn't follow the rules, he would use violence to drive Harry away. Although the result was the same as getting the Moon Island, the kind of behavior wasn't overbearing, it was brutal. The consequence was that no one would dare to work for Walter Messer in the future, and no one would dare to work with him. Therefore, when Harry used the rules of auction to force Walter Messer away, he could only suppress his anger and continue to compete with Harry in the rules. After Walter Messer sat down angrily, Lester came up to him and said, "Sir Messer, Harry is very arrogant, isn't he? He didn't even give you face." "Huh, let him be arrogant first." "On his side, Randy and Harvey are with them. I think they also have a share of the money to buy on the island. These two families are very rich. Sir Messer, don't underestimate them," Lester reminded. He also had his own plans. Now Harry was bidding with Walter Messer. Furthermore, he also had the help of the Banner and Livingston family. In that case, Walter Messer, who didn't have much money to begin with, would definitely not be able to match them. At this moment, Lester, who was rich and overbearing, showed his true strength. Lester originally wanted to monopolize Moon Island, but after Walter Messer's sudden appearance, he gave up on this idea. The Holstead family had a lot of wealth, but their foundation was just too weak. The Holstead family was a family that had only risen in the recent 20 years. It wasn't too much to call them a nouveau riche. The reason why they could make such a huge fortune was because the Holstead family monopolized the entire West Coast mineral resources. Of course, doing so inevitably hindered the interest of others. If there wasn't a powerful force protecting the Holstead family, then there wouldn't be able to become the #1 family in the West Coast. The Holstead family had long been devoured by the people, leaving no remains behind. Therefore, after the Holstead family had made its name, it had quickly become a huge asset of the Messer family. Under the protection of the Messer family, they were able to obtain the wealth of the entire West Coast mineral resources with a clear conscience. As a vassal of Messer family, Lester naturally wouldn't dare to compete with Walter Messer for the Moon Island. However, he was also very unwilling to accept this fact in his heart. Initially, he thought that he had missed. This kind of attitude completely infuriated Walter Messer. Harry had always been as steady as a rock in this contest of price. On the contrary, Walter Messer's bid had changed too much, as if it was not calm enough and guilty enough. As a matter of fact, Walter Messer was indeed guilty. He could only use 70 billion. Now that the price had reached over 60 billion, if the price continued to rise, he would really become guilty. He would be out of money. Especially since Harry had the help of the Banner family and the Livingston family, these two families had always been focused on business and their wealth was frightening. There was no advantage for him to compete with Harry in terms of price. Fortunately, Lester was here as well, and he had promised to help support him. This did not make Walter Messer reveal his fear. Otherwise, he, the dignified heir of the Messer family, would have lost a young man who came out of nowhere in the auction, and it was obvious that he would not give him face. This was something Walter Messer absolutely couldn't accept. He couldn't lose the face and dignity of the Messer family here. Otherwise, he wouldn't only be ridiculed when he returned to his family. With Lester's guarantee, Walter Messer's face revealed a gratified expression. "Very good. Sure enough, the Messer family didn't misjudge the person. Your Holstead family is the most reliable during critical moments." "Thank you for Sir Messer's praise. These are all things that I should do," Lester said excitedly. As long as Walter Messer used his money, he would have a share in the development of Moon Island in the future. However, the development of the matter was not what Lester had expected. Just as he was feeling happy, Walter Messer splashed a basin of cold water on his head. "Today, you will lend me tens of millions of dollars for emergencies. When Moon Island is fully developed in the future, I will return the money to you after the refund." Walter Messer's words poured a chill down Lester's spine. What did he mean by returning the money to him in the future? This was not giving him any benefits just by using his money. The benefits of Moon Island in the future did not even involve Lester. Walter Messer did not even mention how much interest he would use his money to pay. Lester's anger was ignited in his heart. This Walter Messer's way of eating was too ugly. Obviously, he did not put Lester in his eyes. Did he think that the money of the Holstead family came from the strong winds? Which part of the money wasn't dug out from the mines? Furthermore, the Holstead family had to provide a huge sum of money to the Messer family every year. In exchange, Walter Messer treated Lester as a tool and used him whenever he wanted. If he didn't like it, he would simply throw it away. With the source of funds, Walter Messer also had confidence in himself. He immediately continued to bid with Harry. Lester, on the other hand, picked up the stone and smashed his own foot. Not only did he not get any benefits from Walter Messer, he even took away a large sum of money for free. He hated it in his heart, but he didn't dare to reject it on the surface. Without the protection of the Messer family, Lester's family wouldn't live long. The other families had been jealous of the Holsted family for monopolizing the West Coast mining industry for a long time. Without the protection umbrella, they would immediately rush forward and tear the Holsted family apart and devour it. But just because they couldn't refuse Walter Messer, he didn't mean that Lester couldn't pull some tricks behind his back. After Walter Messer finished bidding, Lester quickly went over and said, "Sir Messer, listen to me. I don't have much money on my side. I only have 20 million. You must know what to do." Walter Messer asked with a dark face, "Why is it so little?" "My family spent a lot of money to buy a large ore mine overseas. In order to marry into a big family, they also gave a lot of betrothal gifts. Now I really don't have much liquid funds." Only then did Walter Messer relax his expression and nod his head. He knew both of these things. Lester really wasn't lying. 20 million plus the 70 million in his hand, a total of 90 million, should be enough to suppress Harry's competition. After all, according to his estimations, Moon Island was at most worth 80 million. He didn't think that Harry would be able to bid higher than him when he had bid 90 million because this price had already far exceeded the reasonable price. Seeing that Walter Messer didn't pursue the matter, Lester secretly heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. He was secretly glad that he didn't say how much money he could use from the start. In fact, what Lester said just now was a complete lie. He just wanted to find an excuse to deal with Walter Messer. When he came to participate in the auction, his family had allocated a large sum of money, a total of more than 60 million. The reason why he told Walter Messer that he only had $20 million was that he had taken the money for free. It would not get any benefits from it. Lester was not stupid. Why would he give all the money in his family to Walter Messer? In fact, he knew very well that Walter Messer would return the money to him. Would Lester dare to take the money if he gave it to him? Just now, Lester's mind had been in a rush, and only now did he say that he had only had 20 million. Even though this sum of money was not small, Lester still felt extremely pained in his heart when he took it out for free. But saying more would make it more painful. If he said less, Walter Messer would not believe his excuse. After all, he was the heir of the Holsted family. He came to the auction and said that he didn't bring much money with him. Who was he trying to cheat? 20 million was the amount that Lester said after he weighed it. Since he could bear it, Walter Messer wouldn't have any doubts about it. The two of them were scheming against each other, trying to scheme against Harry. On Harry's side, everything was calm. The few men beside him admired Harry very much. Moreover, their cooperation with Harry was fair and just. None of them would suffer any losses. Therefore, they would not have any thoughts or struggles. Harry saw Walter Messer raise the price to 65 million. He sneered and continued to raise the card. 66 million. 70 million. Harry increased the price by 1 million, while Walter Messer increased the price by a full number every time. It was as if he would have more face than Harry if he raised the price higher than Harry. "Mr. Parker continued bidding. I don't believe that Walter Messer has more money than the four of us," Randy said. Harvey shook his head. "Don't forget that Lester is still with Walter Messer. If the two families work together, it'll be difficult for us to suppress them in terms of price." Troy and Harvey had different thoughts. He said, "Not necessarily. I think Lester and Walter Messer look like they're not as close as we think. I'm afraid the relationship between these two people is not as close as we think." Troy was good at reading people's expressions and words. His observation was indeed very accurate to see the dissatisfaction in Lester's heart towards Walter Messer. Harry trusted Troy. After listening to him, he smiled and said, "Really? Then I will use a big move to blow them up." After saying that, he raised his card again. 80 million. The crowd was in an uproar. No one had expected that Harry, who had always been a steady bidder, would suddenly be so ruthless. In an instant, his bid had increased by 10 million. This price of 80 million was already the highest estimated price on Moon Island. If it exceeded the price, it would mean that the profits in the future would be greatly reduced. However, it was not absolute. There were also many factors affecting the future profits. 80 million was currently the highest estimated price on the Moon Island. Indeed, Walter Messer was stunned by Harry's unusual actions. Initially, everyone thought that Harry didn't have enough funds to bid 1 million each time, But now, the bid had increased tenfold, stopping the group of people from bidding $10 million each time. Not to mention the total price of $80 million was equal to the highest estimated price on Moon Island. Everyone present was curious about how Walter Messer would bid next. Should he continue to give up? After all, everyone knew that the Messer family didn't rely on wealth and power. Walter Messer shouldn't have much money either. It was hard to say whether Lester would be willing to pay the same price as him. Did I hear it wrong? This kid is bidding $80 million? Walter Messer said in shock. Harry really dared to put down a serious bet. Sir Messer, why don't you put it aside for now and use some other methods to bring Moon Island here? Lester took the opportunity to persuade him. He did not want Walter Messer to take away $20 million from him for free. It was not as good to use this money anywhere. Not only would it not bring him any benefits, but it would also not even count as a favor. It was the same as what Lester should do. Therefore, he was urging Walter Messer to give up on the auction. Oh, do you feel sorry for your money? Walter Messer said. Walter Messer was not stupid. He could hear Lester's words. Lester paused for a second and quickly explained. I'm worried about our money. Think about it. We could have bought the island with more than $50 million, but now Harry spent $30 to $40 million on it. This money is now wasted. Walter Messer nodded. That's true. He also felt that if he continued to argue with Harry, no one would get any benefits. It would be very difficult for him to raise the price. But if he gave up just like that, he wouldn't be willing to give up. He was the heir of the Messer family. How could he lose to someone who had no background? Walter Messer pursed his lips and said coldly, Fine, we'll do as you say, but we can't let this Harry get away with it. I'll raise the price first. After thinking for a while, Walter Messer finally accepted Lester's suggestion and gave up on the auction for the time being. He would wait until later to get back at them. Today, because of the rules of the auction, he had no choice but to compete with Harry in terms of price. After that, these restrictions would no longer exist. Using the resources of the Messer family, Walter Messer had plenty of ways to make Harry spit out the Moon Island. After figuring out the reason, Walter Messer raised his sign and said, $90 million. This was a total sum of $90 million he and Lester had. If Harry cannot offer a higher price than this, Walter Messer didn't mind buying Moon Island at this price. After all, $20 million of this money was sponsored by Lester through friendship. But if Harry continued to bid, Walter Messer would do as he wished and make Harry vomit blood. What he didn't know was that Harry and the others had prepared a total of $100 million to buy the island. Although it had exceeded the maximum value, there was still a profit to be made. Everyone saw that Walter Messer had always called out a price of $10 million, and they were all suppressed by their big hands. It was just buying an island. Was there really a need to fight over it? It was as light as a feather. In one sentence, it was all true gold and silver. $10 billion was enough to buy a piece of land in a city for development, and there was no need to borrow money from the bank. $91 million. Harry did not hesitate at all. He immediately followed the price, but this time he returned to the bidding standard. Walter Messer stood up with a smile and said to Harry, Harry is very rich. I'm willing to admit defeat. I won't follow you in this auction. Everyone was shocked. The heir of the Messer family had actually given up on his own accord. What did this mean? It meant that he had given up on his own accord. Such an unbelievable scene made everyone feel disbelief. They felt that this didn't seem like the usual style of Walter Messer. How is this possible? Sir Messer isn't that easy to talk to. Why didn't he follow us? Is there not enough money? No, isn't there still Mr. Lester with him? It's impossible for the two families to only prepare $90 million in total. You two are still too naive. Do you really think that Sir Messer will admit defeat just like that? While everyone was discussing, one of them shook his head and laughed coldly as if he had seen through everything. When the others heard this, they asked curiously, Oh, what do you mean? Sir Messer is not a person who would suffer losses without saying anything. This time, he did not plan to buy the Moon Island at a high price from the beginning. Now that the price has reached such a high price, of course, he would not be willing to spend so much money. The good show is still coming. Everyone thought for a moment and misunderstood what was going on. Walter Messer seemed to have given up on the auction, but with his personality, it was impossible. Since Moon Island was what he wanted, he would definitely do anything to get it. This man called Harry will suffer in the future. It's a waste. Putting aside the money, it is hard to tell who this island belongs to in the future. No one thought highly of Harry. They felt that it was really irrational for him to provoke Walter Messer this time. So what if he bought the Moon Island in the auction? There would be a lot of troublesome things to deal with in the future. The auctioneer heaved a sigh of relief when he saw Walter Messer giving up on the auction. The auction tonight was too scary. The domineering and unreasonable Sir Messer had left a deep impression on him. Fortunately, nothing major happened and the auction was finally over. 91 million going once, 91 million going twice, 91 million going thrice. Deal. The auctioneer repeated the price 3 times at an extremely fast speed and quickly dropped the hammer. He was really afraid that something would happen if he shouted too slowly. It would be best if he could just quickly settle this business deal. Congratulations, Mr. Parker, congratulations. Mr. Parker, I hope your business will prosper in the future. The people who came to the auction were relieved when they saw that they had finally finished their business. Those who were close to Randy and the others came forward and hypocritically said a few flattering words. Then they quickly left this place. Now was not the time for Harry and the others to get close to each other. These few people were like ticking time bombs that had provoked Sir Messer. They would not be able to get better in the future. Even if several families didn't manage to buy Moon Island, they should still discuss with Harry if they could cooperate with him on the development project. After all, Harry and the others weren't professionals in real estate development, but it was because of Walter Messer that no one dared to do so. They were too close to Harry and the others, and they were afraid that the city gate would be affected by the fire. Well, we finally bought it. This Walter Messer was so awesome at the beginning, he still has to make way for us, Randy said with a laugh. Harry looked at Walter Messer, who was sneering at him from afar, and shook his head. Don't be happy too early. I'm afraid this person is holding back some evil tricks in his heart. He's just waiting to use them on us. The other 3 agreed with Harry's words. Walter Messer wouldn't give up on the auction for no reason. There must be something wrong with this. Who cares? The Moon Island is already in our hands. No matter how capable Walter Messer is, he will never give up on the auction. This is also Florida, not the capital. It's not his place to do whatever he wants here. Randy had always been carefree. Although he agreed with Harry's worries, in reality he was not afraid at all. It's better to be careful of the embankment. It's quite a headache for this person to hide in the dark and plot against us, Harvey said cautiously. Walter gave up the auction. Of course, Lester was the happiest. His money was saved. He would not throw it out to make a splash. At most, he would hear a splash. Of course, he was happy in his heart. He could not show it on the surface. Otherwise, Walter Messer could hammer him to death on the spot. Now that Walter Messer's face was so gloomy that it could be covered with ice, he said coldly, Lester, I still have to go back to the capital. You stay in Florida and keep an eye on this Harry. Report to me if there is any movement. Also, investigate this guy's background and find out who he really is. All right. Walter Messer had a feeling in his heart that Harry's identity should not be simple. Otherwise, normal people would not be so irrational as to go against him. That was why he wanted Lester to investigate. Otherwise, it would be very irrational for him to cover his head and deal with an enemy who didn't know his background. As the saying goes, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. Harry knew who Walter Messer was and what his identity was, but Walter Messer was confused about Harry's identity. Before he attacked, he had to find out about the background on his opponent first. Otherwise, if the information he had was not equal, it would be very easy for him to be defeated. Therefore, Walter Messer was not someone who underestimated his opponent. He would not go against Harry without obtaining real information about his opponent. Seeing that Lester had agreed to it, Walter Messer sneered at Harry and gave him a look that he would wait and see. After that, he left the auction hall with his subordinates. When Walter Messer was gone, Wilson, one of the bosses behind the scenes of auction, finally showed himself. He jogged towards Harry. Mr. Parker, what should I say? I really want to thank you for helping me out tonight. Wilson was the main person in charge of the daily operations of the cruise, so he basically stayed on the ship all year long. However, Walter Messer had used his identity to suppress the crowd and didn't dare to bid. Such an overbearing action had obviously broken the rules of the auction and affected the interests of the few bosses behind the scenes. Just like that, Wilson didn't come out to demand an explanation. Now that he had left, he had come out to show his hospitality to Harry. It could be seen that he was extremely afraid of the Messer family's power. After all, most of the items on this cruise were not to be exposed. If he were to create a strong enemy for no reason, it was hard to say whether he would be able to continue doing this business in the future. Of course, this method of bullying the weak and fearing the strong also attracted Randy's disdain. "Wilson, you are too inconsiderate. Why didn't I see you come out to uphold justice just now?" "Mr. Messer is making things difficult for me. How could I dare to offend a noble family like the Messer family? I can only know my own suffering. It's a blessing to be at a disadvantage," Wilson said with a bitter face. "Ha! You are such a person. What you say is half true and half false. It would be a miracle if I believe you. However, we brothers didn't let you suffer any losses today. We have spent more than $90 million to buy Moon Island, and we have taken good care of you. Don't you have anything to say?" Randy said with a cold smile. Of course. The fact that the few men can suppress Sir Messer really surprised me. I admire people who are loyal to justice the most in my life. If these men think highly of me, we will become friends in the future." "I don't see any benefits from being friends with a guy who only recognizes money," Randy still sneered. Among Harry and the others, he had the most contact with Wilson and knew him the most. He knew that Wilson was a guy who would not get up early if he did not have money. The friends he spoke of would definitely be given a few discounts. "What are you talking about? I really want to be friends with a few rich men. I don't see many people who are loyal these days. In the future, if you have any requests, feel free to tell me. As long as I can do it, I won't refuse." Wilson patted his chest and promised. Harry could finally see that this person was really an old fox. The words he said sounded nice, but in fact, there were not many dried goods. He did not want to talk nonsense with this man, so he said, "It's getting late. We should go back after signing the paperwork." The auction was over, but the procedures for buying the island had not been completed yet. Yes. I'll handle it for them right away." The transfer of ownership of Moon Island required a lot of documents to be signed, and Wilson had accepted the full authority of the original owner so he could handle it for Harry on the spot. When signing all the new people on the island, Harry originally planned to sign it together with the four of them. However, Randy and the other two refused to sign it, and were only willing to let Harry sign it himself. After declining for a long time, Harry said that he couldn't beat the three of them, so he could only sign his name. He had paid $91 million in exchange for a pile of documents. Of course, there was also an entire island. Harry and the others had completed today's plan perfectly. The four of them did not plan to stay on the cruise ship any longer. They rushed towards Florida on the yacht at night. In any case, Harry's narwhal had room to rest in, which was more comfortable than the cruise ship. It wasn't as tiring as traveling in the middle of the night. When they returned to Florida at 10 o'clock in the morning, Harry and the others did not get off the boat. They each rested on the boat for the night. They only returned to Florida Grand Hotel from the Narwhal the next morning. When they arrived at Florida Grand Hotel, it would be Randy's territory. He did not have any scruples here. He said excitedly, "Brothers, we have successfully bought such a big island. Today, we have to celebrate." Harvey shook his head and said, "You still want to play? We have spent all our money. We have to hurry up and prepare to develop our capital." Fortunately, they were using the funds in their accounts and did not borrow from the bank, hence the pressure of interest and repayment was reduced. Otherwise, just the interest generated by the tens of millions of dollars per day would be an astronomical figure. If they developed it a day later, they would lose a lot of capital. Hey, there's no need to waste 1 or 2 days. Wouldn't it be too boring if I don't have a good time after doing such a big thing? Randy was still very excited. The development of Moon Island could only be predicted in the foreseeable future. He could make such a big business and gain a lot of points in the family. He could also gain a lot of rights to speak. Randy's proposal was approved by Harry. This was the first time that they had worked together, especially with Troy. He was not familiar with Randy and Harvey, so it was better for them to get to know each other better. However, it was quite boring to only have the four of them celebrating, so Harry suggested finding a few more people. In Florida, Harry and many of his classmates and friends were there. Randy and Harvey also had some acquaintances there. Thus, after informing each other, 20 to 30 people quickly arrived at the hotel. Troy did not have any acquaintances here, but he mainly wanted to get familiar with Randy and Harvey, so there was no need to find any friends to celebrate. Harry called Celeste, Issa, Ivy, Tammy, and a few others over. They were all beautiful women, and their main purpose was to liven up the atmosphere. The celebration was full of men. It would be boring if there were not a few beautiful women to cheer up. Randy and Harvey called over a few friends from Florida who were familiar with each other. Among these people, they were people who were involved in the real estate industry. When they heard that Harry and the other three had spent more than $90 million to buy Moon Island, all of them were shocked. Even Celeste covered her mouth in shock. Harry suddenly left for a day and did not tell her where he was going. After a long time, he went to buy an entire island. Furthermore, it was in the ocean near Florida. The climate here was unique and the value of the island was very high. If the island was fully developed, it would be like a gold mine. Harry, you actually bought the Moon Island? When you have time, can you bring us there to take a look? Tammy's eyes lit up as she said it. Huh? You know about Moon Island? Harry asked. From Tammy's words, he could tell that Tammy knew about the existence of this island. Of course I know. This is one of the 10 largest natural ecological islands in the country. Now the population in the country was increasing and there were fewer and fewer places that could maintain an original ecosystem. Florida had a good climate because of its economic development. This attracted countless foreign people to settle down, so this kind of original ecosystem island was even rarer. One of the 10 main ecosystem islands in the region. If we develop it on the island, wouldn't it destroy the ecosystem? Issa Ivy was a foreigner, so she valued the environment more. Harry was stunned. He suddenly felt that it would be a pity if they developed it on a large scale on the island. The most precious thing on the island was the ecological environment. It would be a pity if they destroyed it. However, they had spent so much money, it would be a waste if they did not develop the island. After thinking for a while, Harry smiled and said, "There are so many designing teams now. There must be a way to maintain the environment and maximize the utilization on the island's resources. There is no need to worry too much about this." Previously, the four of them had gathered $100 million of funds and spent $91 million to buy Moon Island. There was still $9 million left. Adding the funds that they had reserved previously, they were a total of $30 million. This money was barely enough to develop the island. However, if they didn't destroy the ecological environment, they still had to make a proper plan. Mr. Parker is right. The environment on the island is the most valuable. Of course, we won't destroy it. After Harvey finished chatting with his friends, he walked over and happened to hear this topic. I know a top design team in the country. They specialize in researching the harmonious coexistence of people and nature. If they are the developers and designers, not only can they maintain the ecosystem on the island, but they can also perfect and optimize it as much as possible. Harvey continued. That's great. I thought it would be a pity, Tammy said. People now had higher requirements for living conditions. After all, the income was higher and the living standards were also higher. Furthermore, Harry and the others did not intend to target ordinary people in the future of Moon Island. Instead, they wanted to build a beautiful super resort and an ecological maintenance base. This was a rough plan that had not been carefully discussed. Randy and Troy also came over. My family has many famous ecologists in the country. They're also very good at planning and design. I know a lot of foreign green energy companies here. In the future, we can look for them to do the energy utilization on the island. Troy also said. Yes, energy is the most important thing. There's nothing on the island right now. If we want to develop it, we can't do it without energy. Harry nodded. From this, one could see the benefits of working together. Each of the four of them had a lot of connections, and after integrating them, they would be able to perfect their development. If Harry bought this island by himself, it would be very difficult for him to rely on himself in the future. Sometimes not everything could be done with money, but also with the support of connections. The four of them were super rich. Each of their families had a considerable network of connections. Basically, they could find relevant professionals to fulfill all kinds of needs. Even the development plans and daily work did not need Harry and the others to do it personally. There were people under them who could do things for them. Harry wanted to build a resort and hotel on the island. As long as Mr. Cross was found in this area, it would not be a problem. Furthermore, the Starboard Hotel in Maryland had been on the right track ever since it had reopened. Mr. Cross didn't need to stay there all day long to keep an eye on it. It would be a waste for Harry to leave a capable subordinate like him aside. However, if we maintain the ecosystem, we can only do a small number of high-end industries. The startup costs will be a lot. We don't have enough funds left. Harvey thought for a while and said, $30 million seemed to be a lot of funds, but if they wanted to develop and perfect an uninhabited island, the money was not enough. Just from the green energy generation on the island, $120 million could be considered a basic investment. This was also the development of fresh water and transportation, and money had to be used in all aspects. How about we go to the bank and borrow some money? Randy suggested. Harry shook his head and immediately rejected the idea. Although bank loans could solve the financial problems, the interest was too high. Harry did not want to be burdened with the pressure of repayment. Furthermore, it was not that they did not have money, it was just that they had fixed assets. They could not just take out cash in a short period of time. There was another way to solve the problem of funds. It was to hire businessmen to split the industries they planned out and let the small capital from the outside come in. If that was the case, the risk would be lower and they would have the money to operate. Correspondingly, Harry and the others would give a large portion of their future income to outsiders. Harry also denied this point. He didn't intend to let outsiders take advantage of him by buying this island. Loans won't work. Invitation is no good either. Mr. Parker, do you think there are any other ways? Besides the first two solutions, Harry also had to borrow money from the family. If that was the case, there was basically no interest. Because as the heir to Parker family, he had the right to borrow a portion of the money. According to the family's evaluation of Harry, he had the right to borrow money. He could use $50 million worth of funds without any problems, but Harry, who would try his best not to use them. This was because borrowing money from the family was a very troublesome matter. He had to submit an application first, make a detailed explanation of the purpose of using it, and wait for the family committee to review it. Once the audit was completed, he still had to wait for the inspection team to do a live verification. These were not things that could be done in a short period of time, and the procedures were very troublesome. After the funds were taken out, they would have to report to the family committee every quarter of the year before they returned the money, explaining how the funds were used and whether there would be any bankruptcy. Therefore, this was a channel that Harry would consider when he had no other choice. The four of them discussed for a while and felt that the previous considerations were a little too simple. It seemed that $30 million in the initial stage of development funds was not enough no matter how they calculated it. Without a large amount of funds, the development of Moon Island could only be put aside for now. Fortunately, they were using the money in their own accounts. There was no pressure of repayment, so it would not be a problem to delay the development of Moon Island for a period of time. After a period of time, they would get new funds, and it would be possible to start the Moon Island project then. Although Harry's industries were all high-quality assets, they were not violent industries. Although the income seemed to be a lot, it would not reach hundreds of millions in a short period of time. Recently, the income of the movie industry and entertainment company was very objective, but they also needed to bring back the profits and continue to expand the company's scope of operations. After counting, Harry suddenly felt that even if he waited for a period of time to develop Moon Island, he would not have much money left to invest. The other three were in the same situation as Harry. They had to spend all of their savings to buy Moon Island. They definitely wouldn't be able to gather enough funds for the development of Moon Island in a short period of time. Money, money. I only feel that I actually don't have much money now, Randy said helplessly. He was worth more than $10 million, yet he still said that he didn't have money. What a mess. If it really doesn't work, I will ask the old man in my family for money to save me, Harvey said. He was the only heir to the Livingston family, and all the property in his family would belong to him in the future. Therefore, he didn't have to worry about asking for money from his father. Harry shook his head. This is a business partnership between the four of us. It's not a problem to ask for money from our families. Yeah, we could think of a way to solve our own businesses. This development funds are not a small amount. Mr. Livingston, your family is currently expanding the scale of operations. It is not good to borrow money from others, Randy also said. Harvey's family hospital line was expanded and renovated recently. There was not much money to use on a single hospital line. However, if he expanded the number of the entire country, the funds he needed would be terrifying. Harry did not want Harvey's family business to be hindered because of his private business. This won't do. That won't do either. Then the development of Moon Island can't be delayed indefinitely, right? Harvey said with a frown. Harry was about to speak when the phone in his pocket rang. He took it out and saw that it was Kevin calling. Hello, Kevin. Why did you suddenly contact me? Did you encounter some trouble? Harry picked up the phone and asked. Ever since Harry solved the problem at the old street being demolished in Greenville County and returned to Maryland, Kevin rarely contacted him. Before leaving Greenville County, Harry gave the holiday real estate company to Kevin to manage. Now that he called, Harry thought that Kevin had encountered some trouble in the management of the company. Unexpectedly, Kevin's tone was unusually excited. Harry, let me tell you some good news. Do you know how much money I have earned you during this period of time? What do you mean how much money I made? You also have a share in the company. Don't always act like a worker and treat yourself as a boss, okay? Harry said helplessly. When he heard Kevin's happy voice, he knew that it should be fine. Kevin had always been unwilling to accept the share of Holiday's real estate. He just treated it as him working for Harry. Harry was also very helpless about this. Take a guess. It's definitely a number you can't imagine, Kevin said excitedly. Harry was speechless. Since it's out of my expectation, why do you need me to guess? Yes. On the other side of the phone, Kevin scratched his head. He also felt that there was something wrong with his logic. Tell me, how much profit have you made recently? Harry asked with a smile. When he handed over the Holiday real estate company to Kevin, he was still very flustered. At that time, he was just a small figure at the bottom of society. He did not expect that in just over half a year's time, he would be able to produce profits. One should know that when Harry first got the Holiday company, it was still an empty shell. Without the funds left by Harry, Kevin definitely wouldn't be able to operate it. He would have to close down in a few days. But Harry also did not expect Kevin to be able to make an empty shell company profit in such a short period of time. Well, I was also scared at first. I didn't expect to earn so much. It's a total of $120 million. Do you dare to believe it? Kevin was laughing so hard that he almost lost his breath. Harry immediately widened his eyes. How much? He thought he was hearing things. The number Kevin was talking about was a little scary. More than $120 million! Pure profit, no cost! Kevin repeated. Damn! Harry, who had always been civilized, couldn't help but curse. Over $120 million was still pure profit. Even robbing a bank could not earn that much. Even if he dug a gold mine, he still had time. It had only been a half a year. Unless Kevin was a defiant immortal, he wouldn't be able to earn that much just by relying on the funds left behind by Harry. Tell me how you did it, Harry said excitedly. Randy and the others beside him suddenly became excited when Harry picked up the phone. They all looked at him with questioning eyes. Harry briefly explained, We may have the startup funds. Really? Randy perked up. The four of them were frowning just now. They were trying to figure out where they could find such a large sum of money. They didn't expect Harry to solve this matter in the time it took to answer a phone call. They were closer to Harry, and they had vaguely heard some words like, I earned $120 million. Randy and the others two looked at each other after they realized what had happened. They suddenly laughed. They really solved the problem with the money. Although they didn't know what was going on, since Harry had said so, it shouldn't be a big problem. However, they were also wondering who had called Harry and why more than $100 million had suddenly appeared. This was not a small amount. After Harry asked about it, Kevin told him everything in detail. After Harry left Greenville County, Kevin ran the Holiday real estate company by himself. At first, he really did not know anything. He only knew how to buy land, build houses, and then sell houses. Of course, buying land also followed the principle of cheap. He could buy whatever he wanted. He did not know anything else. Therefore, he bought a large piece of wasteland at a very low price at the border between the county and the city. At first, his peers in Greenville County laughed at him. They felt that Holiday real estate wouldn't last more than a month in Kevin's hands before it went bankrupt and closed down. After all, it was just a piece of wasteland. Whether it was the county or the city, it was very far away. There was no value in developing or investing at all. However, after Kevin bought the land, this place became the core area of the new development zone. And one night, the price of land soared, and the land Kevin bought with $200 million directly rose by more than 10 times. Kevin was also a bachelor. He knew that he was not the raw material for real estate development. He did not intend to build a house to sell, so he sold the land with the wave of his hand. After that, with more than $2 million in capital, he was lost again. He didn't know how to spend it. At this time, he saw the news. Recently, he had bought the sea area to make money by cultivating it. He thought that he would not build a house, but since he had been living by the sea since childhood, he would always fish. Thus, he used all of his money to buy a large sea area to prepare seafood breeding. Who knew that not long after, an exploration team with the address of the sea came. After exploring the sea area, they actually said that there was a large amount of oil and gas at the bottom of the sea. This was incredible. Human society could not afford to lack oil and gas at the moment. Oil and gas occupied the most important positions in the sea, and they could not be regenerated. Each day was more expensive than the last. The sea region that Kevin bought suddenly found a large amount of oil and gas resources. This was a treasure trove that he was holding in his arms. Not long after, several oil development companies came looking for him, wanting to buy this region of sea. Kevin felt that he did not have the ability to start oil mining. After discussing a suitable price, he sold it, and the buyer gave $120 million. After listening to this description, Harry was stunned. This Kevin's luck was simply heaven-defying. The big prize in the lottery was much weaker than his lucky encounter. "Don't tell me you only sold it for $120 million, Harry asked. Compared to the oil resources at the bottom of the ocean, Kevin did not get much money from selling it. $120 million was considered a loss, and it was a huge loss. Kevin laughed loudly on the phone. "How could that be? $120 million is just a part of the transfer fee. I could still get $20 million every year. I understand the principle of a steady flow of water. We can't just do a one-time deal. I have obtained $120 million in the early stage, in addition $20 million per year. This price was quite appropriate. Regardless of whether the oil field could be mined for 10 or 20 years, it would still be able to obtain a portion of the profits from this place. Moreover, it was a pure profit without any cost expenditure." "Awesome, big brother. Your luck is really awesome." Harry sighed from the bottom of his heart. Compared to Kevin, who relied on heaven-defying luck to make a fortune, Harry felt that he was just a trash. There was no way he could compare with Kevin. "I never dreamed that after suffering for half of my life, I would have saved up all my luck until today. Speaking of which, the holiday doesn't need that much money. I just thought that you would need a lot of money to do business in Maryland. Take this money back." Kevin had always thought that the money he earned belonged to Harry. After all, the holiday company and the startup funds were all given by Harry. Without these, he wouldn't have had such an opportunity today, and he wouldn't have been able to make such a large amount of money. Harry thought for a while and nodded. "I really need a large sum of money recently. How about this? I will take $100 million and $20 million to keep in the company's account. You can continue to use it." $100 million is not enough. Other than $120 million, it's not enough. I still have $1 million. Why don't you take the rest of it?" Kevin asked. The poor kid, who once picked up trash, was now very generous. A few million was actually called a fraction. Harry did not know whether to laugh or cry when he heard this. "That's enough. You could stay behind and continue to develop the company. Also, help your younger brothers and sisters improve their living conditions. Don't be reluctant to spend money." "Okay, I got it. More than $20 million. Even if you spend more than a dozen lifetimes, you won't be able to spend it at all. Just leaving a few million at home is enough," Kevin said. He had been poor for his entire life and suddenly became rich. He had no idea what it meant to spend money to enjoy himself. He felt that having a few million was the best life he could have. Harry ended the call with Kevin. Very quickly, a large amount of money was transferred into Harry's account, a total of $100 million. Looking at the amount on the account and the long string of zeros behind it, Harry felt that it was very unreal. He was considering where he should find the funds to develop Moon Island, but a huge sum of money was just dropped from the sky, and this problem was easily solved. Randy and the others had gathered around Harry just now, and they had clearly heard the phone call. They couldn't help but click their tongues. "What the heck? There is such a lucky person in this world?" Randy's eyes almost popped out. Troy shook his head when he heard that. "I have also bought the sea. Why haven't I encountered such a good thing?" "This luck? There are only a few in the entire world. This is too heaven-defying," Harvey agreed. Tammy, who was watching by the side, was baffled. She only vaguely heard something about more than $100 million, good luck, and so on. She asked, "What's going on? Isn't Kevin a brother from your family in Greenville County? What's wrong with him?" Tammy had also come from Greenville County. When she heard that the matter was related to her hometown, she was very curious. Harry repeated the matter to her. In the end, not only Tammy, but all the girls present had their mouths wide open and their jaws almost fell to the ground. Kevin earned you more than $120 million? Tammy asked in surprise. "Strictly speaking, this is our common fortune," Harry said. He was the one who gave the money to Kevin, but he had agreed at the time that Kevin would have a share of the money, so Harry could not take all of it. "No matter what, we have the funds here. Mr. Parker, how much do you plan to spend on the development of Moon Island?" Randy said excitedly. Harry calculated for a while. "We've already gathered $30 million. I will take out another $70 million from this money to gather $100 million as early development funds. We could talk about it if we don't have enough in the future." $100 million was more than 3 times more than the previous $30 million. It was enough for the development of Moon Island. Harry felt that he should really thank Kevin for solving the financial problem for Harry and the others. This money was really timely. Since the money is in place, let's not drag it out. Tomorrow I'll go and find the design team, and I will first come up with a few plans for the selection, Harvey said. Harry nodded. All right, then I'll have to trouble you with this. The Moon Island had already been bought with money. The earlier the development, the earlier the profits would be. It was naturally best to act as soon as possible. However, with such a huge project in Florida, Harry estimated that he would have to stay here for a long period of time. As for Maryland, if there were any problems, he would go back and settle them. Anyway, he had a private jet, so it was not a big deal to travel back and forth. It would not take much time. After the four of them discussed for a while, they registered a company called Moon Island Development Company the next day. Harry, as the chairman, enjoyed 70% of the company's shares, while the other three took 10% each. This was because Harry had added $70 million in funds. Randy and the others felt that the previous agreement was not appropriate, so they each gave a portion to Harry. Harry could not decline, so he agreed with the three of them. 70% of the shares gave him the absolute right to speak in the company. Of course, as the people who had the best relationship with Randy, Harry wouldn't let the three of them suffer any losses. Harvey left Florida and went to contact the design team from other places. Troy returned to Maryland. He still had a few industries that needed to be adjusted there. He would only come back after he was done with it. In Florida, a new company had been established. Harry also needed to organize the personnel. In terms of the management of the company, Mr. Cross was the most capable subordinate of Harry. He would not be at ease even if he gave such a large company to someone else. Therefore, Harry contacted Mr. Cross and asked him to hand over Star Moon Hotel to his subordinate to manage. Then, he would come to Florida and become the CEO of Moon Island's development company. He would help Harry establish the new company. On the side of Star Moon Entertainment, Chelsea had been staying in Florida to take charge of the overall situation. Jen also went back to help her. Harry was very assured that the two of them would be there. In Tiny Hat Film Studio, the Doomsday Legends crew also carried out filming in an orderly manner. Recently, their sworn enemy, the Sky Fortress crew, had been very well behaved and didn't dare to cause any trouble. It was all because Kiss Holiday was scared by Harry. Every time, not only did she get any benefits, but she also didn't get any benefits. After going back and forth a few times, she learned her lesson and did not dare to get angry again. As for the real investor of Sky Fortress, Lester, he had encountered many obstacles on Harry's side. Now, he did not dare to directly attack Harry. This was Florida, not the entire West Coast. It was not wise to go against Harry after leaving his territory. However, Lester had been hiding in Florida, following Walter Messer's orders and observing Harry's every move. He was waiting for Walter Messer to come back and deal with Harry. A few days passed, just like that. After Mr. Cross handed over the Star Moon Hotel and a series of properties, he took the opportunity to come to Florida with some of his subordinates. At the same time, Harvey also arrived with the design team. In Florida Grand Hotel, after Mr. Cross saw Harry, he excitedly walked forward and greeted. "Sir, it's been a few days since I last saw you. Is everything all right?" Harry nodded. "Yes, my side is all right. Have you arranged everything in Maryland?" "Yes, I've handed over all the properties in Maryland to my assistant. He has followed me for many years and is very loyal." "That's good. Do you have any objections about me when you were transferred to Florida?" Harry asked with a smile. No matter what, Mr. Cross also operated in Maryland. It had been so many years, and that was the place he was most familiar with. Harry didn't know if he had any complaints about him coming to Florida all of a sudden. Mr. Cross shook his head. "How could that be? I'm happy, sir, that you gave me such a big project to operate." When he heard that Harry had set up a new company and wanted to develop an entire island and that he had given this task to Mr. Cross was actually very excited. This showed that Harry attached great importance to him and also trusted him. "That's good. The design team is here too. Let's go and take a look together." Harry nodded and got up and brought Mr. Cross to Harvey's place. At this time, Harvey and Randy were in a high-end conference room in Florida Grand Hotel explaining the specific situation of Moon Island to the design team. After seeing Harry bring his men in, Harvey stood up and introduced them. "Everyone, this is the chairman of our Moon Island Development Company, Harry." "Hello, Director Parker." There were about a dozen people, men and women. Most of them were relatively young. After hearing Harry's introduction, they knew that this was the big boss. They quickly stood up to greet him. Harvey introduced them to Harry again. "Mr. Parker, these are the teams of the Green Shore Design Company. They're in charge of the development plan of our Moon Island." Green Shore Design Company was a well-known top design company in the world. It had previously received many city-level planning and design plans and had even made future plans for many small countries. It could be considered a top elite team. However, this company's name was too long and it was described in English with a long string of words. This was why it was called Green Bank Design for short. Harvey gave Harry a simple explanation of the company's qualifications. Only then did Harry know that although these designers looked very young, they were all masters that could not be underestimated. When Harry sized up these people, these designers were also observing Harry. As the heir of Livingston's family, they all knew Harvey very well. The scale of the Livingston family's business was already very shocking. But now, the heir of such a super big family was standing respectfully in front of Harry. It made the designers more and more curious about Harry's identity. Which family's heir could have a higher status than him? Also, the leaders of Harry's company were too young. Harry, Harvey, and Randy were all top-grade men, and they were all young. They had already started to manage so much wealth and develop such a big project on the island. It was truly shocking. Before coming here, they had also understood that the value of the Moon Island was not low. A rough estimate could cost hundreds of millions. In addition, the cost of development would also be $100 million. The combined funds used to develop the island were too scary. After exchanging greetings, Harry gestured for everyone to take their seats. "What was the topic you guys were talking about before I came?" Harry asked. "Oh, I explained the geographical location of Moon Island and the terrain and environment of the island to all the designers," Harvey replied. Harry looked at the designers again. "Is there anything else you need to know?" "Chairman Parker, Mr. Livingston asked us to come up with a few plans previously, so the company attached great importance to this matter. They just sent our team here. Although it was a simple understanding just now, if we want to make the most perfect plan, we still need to go to the island and investigate." The one who spoke was a beautiful woman. She looked to be around 23 or 24 years old, and she had an Asian face. Harry was stunned for a moment. "May I ask your name?" "Chairman Parker, just call me Anna. I'm the person in charge of the design team." Anna smiled sweetly at Harry. Her smile was very charming. There were a pair of dimples on both sides of her mouth. Harry did not expect such a young beauty to be the person in charge of the world's top design team. Different from other industries, designing this kind of work, without extraordinary strength, a layman would not be able to lead a team. And since Anna was leading a team of more than 10 people, it showed that she indeed had extraordinary abilities. Harry did not pay too much attention to the issue of age. In his view, age did not mean anything. Jen still not had graduated from university and was still a world-class fashion design master. "Miss Anna, do you mean you want to take the team to the island for a field inspection? How long will it take?" Harry asked. It was not a problem to go to the island, but he had to ask how long it would take. That was the uninhabited island. There was nothing on it. If he stayed there for a longer period of time, he would need to make proper preparations. Anna flipped through the information and said, "The time is not certain. According to the overall size of the island, it will take a week or even longer. The main reason is that the terrain of Moon Island is more complicated. It is filled with dense vegetation and mountain ranges. It will take a long time to investigate." Harry nodded. "Since this is a job requirement, then we have to go. However, this is no material on the island that can provide daily necessities. We have to prepare first." "Yes, I will have to trouble Mr. Parker with this," Anna smiled and said. "Of course," Harry nodded. There were more than a dozen people on the design team. They would stay on the island for a week or even longer. Just eating and drinking was a troublesome matter. Furthermore, they were working for Harry. Harry could not just ignore them. However, this matter was easy to resolve. There was nothing that could be done with money. Harry waved his hand and gave each of them $100,000 for the activity. He asked them to buy tools for outdoor survival and daily necessities and so on. Living in the dense forest on the island for more than a week was a very difficult thing. Anna and the others rarely encountered this kind of hard work, but the treatment Harry gave them was not low. $100,000 per person could buy the best materials. Therefore, these people were very happy in their hearts. They felt that they met a generous boss. After exchanging for a while more, Anna led the team to purchase the materials. They actually had very little time. After completing Harry's commission, they still had other work to do in the company, so they did not have much time to waste. After leaving Florida Grand Hotel, they took the special car that Harry had arranged for them on the way to the downtown area of Florida. Anna's subordinates were sighing with emotion in the car. "Chairman Parker is really generous. He gave us $100,000. We won't have to work so hard on the island anymore." "The coast is the best. The food here is like heaven to me. When I'm done with my work here, I must go take some time to enjoy my feast." Team Leader Anna, don't rush to take us back to the company after the exploration on Moon Island is done. You must take a day, no, half a day. Let everyone enjoy the coast's food culture. Anna looked at her team members and smiled. Okay, I will try my best to apply at the company and let everyone have a small vacation. Oh, long live the team leader! Everyone immediately cheered. Team Leader Anna, you're from the coast. Can you tell everyone what delicious food is in Florida? And now that I've said it, I don't have any expectations anymore. When I'm done, I'll give everyone a surprise. Anna said mischievously. She was indeed from a small town, but after she graduated from studying abroad, she started working outside. However, she was more familiar with the country that she grew up in than the one she had been in abroad. The group of people quickly purchased the supplies. There were nothing more than tents, sleeping bags, blankets, and necessary emergency medicine and movement tools. They also bought a large amount of food that was easy to store and carry in the wild. After bringing these things back to Florida Grand Hotel, they met up with Harry again. Chairman Parker, we've decided to set off for Moon Island now. Do you have any other special instructions? Anna asked. Why are you guys in such a hurry? Didn't you guys just arrive here to rest first? Harry asked in surprise. These designers' attitudes were a little rushed, which made Harry not quite understand. No, we've already rested on the plane. The work doesn't wait for people. It's better to finish it earlier. Anna said. Actually, it wasn't that they were proactive. It was that the coast had enticed them with countless delicacies, urging them to finish it as soon as possible. This was something Harry would never have thought of. Who would have thought that the foreigners would work hard because of the temptation of delicious food? Looking at the time, it was already afternoon. These people did not even have lunch before rushing to the island. Harry respected Anna and the others. It was unreasonable for such a hard-working person to not succeed. No wonder she was already a world-class designer at such a young age. It's just that we didn't board the boat to Moon Island, so we have to trouble Chairman Parker to arrange it for us. Anna said again. Harry thought for a moment and said, How about this? I will send you there personally. Speaking of which, I haven't been to Moon Island yet. We can go and take a look together. What? Chairman Parker, you want to go too? Anna was shocked. Going to the island to investigate was a tough job. She didn't think that Harry, with such a noble status, would also want to go there. Anyway, it's on the way. You guys take my yacht over. I'll take the opportunity to take a look at the island, Harry said. The matter was settled just like that. Harry drove the single-horned whale and brought Anna and the others to Moon Island. Apart from Anna and Randy, Harvey, Mr. Cross, and Harry had also come to the island. As Harry's subordinate and the CEO of the Moon Island Development Company, how could Mr. Cross not follow? In addition, as Harry's guard, June and Wayne were also on board. Furthermore, they were worried that the Moon Island was too remote and that something would happen to Harry. George brought over 100 elites from Wolf Guard and boarded another ship with him. There were more than 200 people in the group, and they were heading towards Moon Island in a grandiose manner. In a hotel in Florida, Lester was talking to Walter Messer on the phone. Messer, according to my subordinate's report, Harry summoned a team of designers today, and now he has brought some people to explore Moon Island. Is that so? This is good news. Do you know how long they will be gone for? My men said they have prepared a lot of daily supplies. I think they'll be staying there for a while. I'm not sure about the details. Well, that's enough. Your response to this information is not bad, Walter Messer said with satisfaction. Messer, are you planning to make a move on the island? Lester tried asking. Let's give them a little bit of suffering first. Just treat it as a warning. If they don't know what's good for them, then we'll make them more vicious, Walter Messer said with a sneer. I asked you to investigate Harry's background. How's the investigation going? Why haven't I seen you report it to me? Walter Messer asked again. Messer, I did, but I can't tell you who Harry is or what his background is. He's just an ordinary person. I think it's strange, so I asked my men to continue to investigate. Lester quickly explained. He was very curious about Harry's identity after he got the information. He did not understand why it was such an ordinary information. There was no difference between him and an ordinary person. However, Harry was not an ordinary person at the moment. His net worth was hundreds of millions. He had many properties under his name, and he even called Randy Harvey his brother. This kind of person said that he came from an ordinary background. This was a huge joke. Is that so? Is the information false? Go and investigate carefully, Walter Messer said coldly. Okay, Messer, I will find out the truth as soon as possible. Lester quickly promised. After turning off the phone, Walter Messer said to himself, Harry, this is your chance. Moon Island is so remote, so it's normal for something to happen, right? Although he had returned to the capital after giving up on the auction, it did not mean that he had given up on Moon Island. In the capital, there were still matters that needed to be dealt with personally by Walter Messer's family, and they were temporarily unable to spare all their energy to deal with Harry. Thus, they temporarily put this matter aside. However, just because he did not have the energy now did not mean that he could not instruct his own hands to do something. It was very easy to find some trouble for Harry first. Walter Messer's plan was to use all kinds of means to let Harry know that Moon Island was a bomb in his hands and that he would be killed sooner or later. It was the wisest decision to hand it over to Walter Messer obediently. At that time, Walter Messer would be able to buy Moon Island at a low price under coercion and enticement. He wouldn't need to pay close to $100 million. This was a plan in Walter Messer's heart. But sometimes when things were perfectly thought out, it would always be unsatisfactory. Walter Messer had no idea how powerful the force behind Harry was. It was also because he had enough confidence and strength to resist the attacks from the outside world that Harry didn't feel safe about Walter Messer's threat. When a soldier came, he would block the water and the earth. As long as Walter Messer dared to attack Harry, he would know that he had provoked Walter Messer. What kind of huge monster was this? The narwhal sailed on the surface of the sea. The bow of the ship, which looked like a scabbard, split open waves. It pushed open the sea water and swept across the side of the ship, forming a straight white trail as stern as the ship that did not disperse for a long time. On the surface of the sea, not far from the narwhal, there was another yacht. George led his men and drove this yacht to guard the narwhal protecting Harry. The yacht that George and the others were riding on was Randy's. It was not very luxurious, but the total weight was not small either, close to 2,000 tons of drainage. Although it was much worse than the narwhal, it was enough to accommodate more than 100 Wolfguards elites. Moreover, it could provide so many people with more than 2 months of daily necessities. It could barely be considered a voyage yacht. Randy felt that the decorations of the ship was a little outdated. The hull was a little outdated, so he threw it on the dock of Florida Grand Hotel and did not use it much. He would lend it to George and the others when he went out to sea this time. Anyway, it would be a ways to stop at the dock where the wind blew and the sun shone all day. On the deck of the ship's bow, Anna and her team members were all overjoyed to the point of going crazy. They did not expect to be able to board the world's most luxurious and largest private yacht after completing their mission here. The narwhal's 12,000 tons of drainage was indeed a super giant in the private yacht world. The world is a unique existence, and interior and exterior of the ship are all super technological, just like entering a future starship. If it wasn't for the horned whale's high-speed travel on the sea, they would have thought that they were dreaming. It's actually the horned whale, team leader Anna. We're actually riding the horned whale. This is too unbelievable. One of the team members said with an excited expression. This kind of world-class yacht is definitely unique. I never thought that I would have the day to personally experience her voyage on the deck. I heard that this yacht is worth more than $6 million. I never thought that the mysterious rich man who bought her would actually be Chairman Parker. What kind of background does he have? I'm really curious. A female designer said. Anna rebuked. Can you understand Director Parker's identity and background? You must be careful with your words. Don't get into trouble. Yes, team leader, I understand. The female designer replied, feeling wronged. She didn't know that Anna's warning was for her own good. In this world, many super rich people were very afraid of others investigating their identities. They didn't even hesitate to kill the person who had violated the taboo. These were all things that had happened in the past. If this female designer was so curious, it was very easy for her to get herself killed. However, Anna still didn't understand Harry. He was not the kind of person who would go on a killing spree just because of a disagreement. On the contrary, Harry was very friendly in front of ordinary people. Sometimes, even if they unintentionally offended Harry, he would never take it to heart and would not care too much about it. Anna, bring your team members to the restaurant on the boat for lunch. Although it delayed lunchtime, it's good that the boat can make up for it. Harry appeared on the deck and greeted them.